I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents. Budget negotiations in Washington seem to have boiled down to one thing: funding for Planned Parenthood. We'll talk to a leading pro-life group about it. Plus, caring for the strangers among us. Bishop DiMarzio drops by to talk about his work with the Pontifical Council on Migration.
Well, I think refugees right now, as you see, the Middle East is in upheaval. You've got refugees coming out, coming to Europe, different places in the Middle East. It's a major problem for the world.
And a shark attacked her, and she lived to do a lot more than just tell about it.
Well, that's where God comes in. He can pull us through those frustrating and discouraging moments, and we can push through.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. The clock is ticking on the midnight deadline for Congress and the White House to agree on a spending plan or face a federal government shutdown. Democrats say a Republican effort to strip Planned Parenthood of federal funding over abortion is holding up a deal, but Republicans insist that the amount of overall spending cuts is the biggest sticking point. Earlier, House Speaker John Boehner called on Senate Democrats to pass a House-approved plan to fund the Pentagon through September and the rest of the government for another week.
One reason that we do not have an agreement as yet, and that issue is spending. We're close to a resolution on the policy issues, but I think the American people deserve to know, when will the White House and when will Senate Democrats get serious about cutting spending?
One of the most outstanding issues is not about money and how to achieve a more frugal government. It is the defunding of Planned Parenthood. This has no impact on the budget. It has no impact on the deficit or the debt. What it does reduce is opportunity for women. It does not reduce federal spending.
Well, more than 800,000 federal government employees would be without a job, and all the services they provide put on hold unless Congress and the White House reach an agreement before midnight. Joining me now to talk more about the funding for Planned Parenthood and how it plays into the budget fight is Marilyn Musgrave with the pro-life group, the Susan B. Anthony list. Ms. Musgrave, thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, you're very welcome. It's amazing when the whole thing with health care reform started coming down. Susan B. Anthony list was saying abortion is not health care. And here we are today in this situation with those members of Congress that are beholden to Planned Parenthood, pretending that Planned Parenthood is an organization that helps women, denying that Planned Parenthood is all about abortion. But we know it is, and it's amazing that they're willing to shut down the government over this issue.
Isn't it true, though, that the funds that come from the federal government don't go toward abortion funding abortion procedures themselves? That is actually prohibited by federal law. Those funds have to go toward other health, cancer screenings and other health care services that are provided. And the funds that go toward abortion have to be raised separately. Is that the case, or am I wrong there?
Well, the case is presented like that all the time, but the fact of the matter is money is fungible. The more money Planned Parenthood gets from taxpayers, hard-earned taxpayer dollars, the more money they have to do abortions. It's not about helping young girls. It's all about abortion and taking our tax dollars to perform those abortions. Planned Parenthood is not an organization that is needy. It's over $1 billion a year corporation. In this time of financial crisis, the last thing we need to do is be funding Planned Parenthood with any of our tax dollars.
Sure. So, in your opinion, do you think that this is worth putting the rest of the federal government on hold and, possibly leading to the shutdown at midnight tonight over this issue?
Well, I think when you believe that abortion is taking a life of an innocent unborn child, of course it is worth anything to say to those of us that are pro-life around this country, people that would even call themselves pro-choice, we don't want our tax dollars going for abortion. And the amazing thing is, it's always been the pro-lifers that have said this is a litmus test. Well, evidently, This is a huge issue for those on the pro-choice side. They're willing to not pay our soldiers, to not pay our federal workers, to shut the government down over this. I think at this time of financial crisis in our country, we have to look very hard at public funding for anything. But public funding for Planned Parenthood, again, $1 billion a year corporation that pays its executives six-figure incomes, they need our tax dollars. And we also know that there are many other ways that women can receive health services. But again, the pro-abortion crowd would try to convince us that abortion is health care and this organization deserves our funding.
Does this funding measure, this Title X funding, Title X funding, does that belong in the budget, or would it be better addressed going through a longer period of debate and all of that later on and separated from the budget to get this budget passed and get the government back to work?
Well, the pro-abortion side has opposed every legislative effort that anyone who holds a pro-life stand has taken. Partial birth abortion ban, parental notification, fetal pain legislation, they haven't been willing to give up anything. And I think right now we're really seeing a time of moral crisis in this country. But pro-life individuals, and we have pro-life heroes in Congress, we have the most pro-life Congress ever. Again, they're saying at this time of fiscal crisis and the moral outrage, taxpayer dollars having to fund abortion, it's time to say no.
Do you think that possibly if the government does shut down, and if it is at least portrayed that this is the issue that shuts the government down because they can't come to an agreement on a budget over this issue and the funding of Planned Parenthood, do you think that hurts the pro-life movement at all, if that's the perception?
Well, I think what is happening, those who are saying we will refuse to pay our soldiers, we will refuse to pay our government workers, we will shut down the government over this issue, reveal that they are beholden to Planned Parenthood. They are beholden because they are supported by Planned Parenthood for their pro-abortion stand, for their willingness to use our tax dollars to fund abortion. But in all of this debate, Planned Parenthood has to really pretend it's something it's not. It has to pretend it's an organization that takes care of women and girls and provides health services where women couldn't get it anywhere else. None of that is true. Abortion is not health care, and Planned Parenthood does not deserve our tax dollars.
All right, well, Marilyn Musgrave with the Susan B. Anthony list, we thank you so much for taking some time out to join us today here on Currents. We appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Thanks. Well, there's much more Currents coming up. Just when you thought things couldn't get any worse in Japan, they get worse. The latest on yesterday's deadly aftershock and the rest of the day's headlines next. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure. Coming up later, she may be the comeback player of the year. A young lady fights the odds and surfs again. But first, let's have a look at the day's headlines. Well, 3 people are dead, more than 140 others injured in yesterday's 7.1 magnitude aftershock in Japan. Yesterday's aftershock was even closer to land than the magnitude 9.0 quake that has left almost 12,500 people dead and close to 15,000 still missing. Officials say there was no further damage to the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant, where workers continue their efforts to keep overheating reactors under control. Catholic relief organization Caritas International continues to work with dioceses in the affected areas. Pope Benedict's envoy to the Ivory Coast is still unable to reach the troubled African nation. A report says Cardinal Peter Turkson, who is the head of the Vatican's Justice and Peace Office, has been unable to travel to the Ivory Coast because there are no flights to the country. Now, that comes as a result of the ongoing fighting there over the contested presidential election results. Fidesz news agency reporting that mass graves with hundreds of bodies have been discovered in parts of that country. An official in one diocese says the church has opened its doors to people who were forced to leave their homes, but food and medicine are needed. Meantime, Pope Benedict is offering his prayers for Libyan refugees who are feared to have died when a boat sank near Italy. The boat carried an estimated 300 people fleeing political upheaval in North Africa and in the Middle East. The Italian ministry and a fishing boat were able to rescue 47 people earlier this week. 20 bodies were pulled from the water, 150 people rather, missing and feared dead. The Vatican spokesman says Pope Benedict is praying for all of the victims. The Christian woman found guilty of blasphemy in Pakistan is reportedly gravely ill. The president of a Pakistani humanitarian rights organization tells Asian News that Asia Bibi has the chicken pox now, and her situation is getting worse because of the unsanitary conditions around her. Bibi has been in solitary confinement for more than 3 months. She was sentenced to die last November after being found guilty of violating Pakistan's strict blasphemy laws. Well, the Associated Press is reporting that the New Hampshire legislator who dubbed a bishop in the state a pedophile pimp has finally offered a personal apology. The AP says New Hampshire House leader DJ Betancourt met privately with Manchester Bishop John McCormick on Thursday. Neither side is commenting on that meeting. Betancourt, writing on his Facebook wall last week, called McCormick a pedophile pimp after the bishop spoke out against proposed state budget cuts at a rally. Well, meantime, a bishop in Belgium was also recently under fire, but in a much different way. A French news agency reporting that a renowned Belgian prankster posted footage on YouTube of Archbishop André-Joseph Léonard, you see there, being hit in the face with pies. One of the pie wielders told a Belgian media outlet there that the ambush was on behalf of young girls who want to get abortions and people with same-sex attraction. Well, the budget battle is not the only controversy bishops are weighing in on in this country. This week, they urged Congress to support legislation that would protect conscience rights in the health insurance industry. In a letter to Congress, Cardinal Daniel DiNardo says the legislation will protect both health insurance providers and those who purchase health insurance. DiNardo says the measure, known as the Respect for Rights of Conscience Act of 2011, will prevent providers and buyers from being forced to participate in plans that cover abortion and artificial contraception. Closer to home, reports say a judge has approved the sale of the former location of St. Vincent's Hospital in Manhattan. A realty company, and the North Shore Long Island Jewish Hospital System are purchasing the property for $260 million. The plan to build a luxury housing development and an emergency medical center there. The hospital closed its doors last year and declared bankruptcy. It was the last Catholic hospital in New York City. And some students in the Diocese of Brooklyn were given an opportunity to meet their angels. The Futures in Education Foundation brought together these young people and the generous men and women who are helping pay for their Catholic education.
This is one of the best events that we do in the Angel program. It's the evening where the angels get a chance to meet their students, and it's such a special night.
Angels are God sent. They're sponsors that want to be involved in a student's life by providing partial assistance financially to help make sure that that kid can stay in school.
You're not just writing a check into some giant fund somewhere and then your check is used for the photocopy machine. Instead, these funds, 100% of the money that you write and the check that you write goes straight to the account of the student at their school. And then there's a one-on-one relationship. You can see our students get to know their angels. The angels get report cards. They get notes from them. It's really special.
The most satisfying part is meeting all these young people, as I did tonight, and see how happy they are to be here and how grateful they are for the help they're getting.
The first time I got an angel, I really didn't know what it was because I was in 3rd grade, but as I grew older, I understood the full concept of having an angel and how important that is to me and to my family.
You know, when we were children, we all had guardian angels. So an angel is someone that, really watches over you, protects you, and someone that you know is always there for you.
It's very appreciative kids there. Well, stay tuned. There's much more currents ahead. Coming up, the bishop from this city of immigrants goes into the deep about helping migrants as part of a pontifical council.
The council tries to give some kind of a direction, a moral direction to the world and to the countries involved about how we have to deal with these problems.
Welcome back. Well, the Vatican's teaching on immigration and the treatment of migrants is being put to the test after at least 150 refugees either died or are feared dead after their boat sank off an Italian island earlier this week. The men, women, and children were fleeing political unrest in Libya and Tunisia. Well, the Italian island has been a popular port of arrival for North African immigrants trying to enter Europe, especially since protests erupted in North Africa and the Middle East. But their growing presence is fast becoming a political question and a financial burden for their Italian hosts. In response to the Vatican's age-old call to welcome the stranger, it suffered intense political backlash, with some Italians calling for the church and its institutions to be the first to house the rising wave of immigrants. Well, Caritas Italy has in fact opened its doors to the immigrants, but the criticism remains, and the Vatican remains firm in its teaching on immigration. Well, recently I had a chance to sit with Brooklyn Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio to learn more about the teaching on migration and the council responsible for setting the Vatican's agenda on migrants and migration. We discussed that and more in this week's Into the Deep. Bishop DiMarzio, thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
Good to always be here.
Well, the Pontifical Council for Migration, basically, is kind of the basic title of this, and you are now a member of it, once again, I understand, and congratulations on that.
Well, I've been a member since the year 2000, and the Pontifical Councils would be departments of the Vatican that would deal with certain things, and there's been a Pontifical Council of Migration since 1970, I believe, and I've been a member since year 2000, and I've been reappointed again for another term. The council would have an archbishop who would be the president or cardinal at times, and a bishop who would be a secretary, and then others who would be the staff. But then in addition to that, there would be members of the council, all bishops. Some consultors would be non-bishops, but bishops, archbishops, cardinals would be the consultors, where they have special expertise. I've been there for, I sense, over 10 years, but with an expertise in migration. Certainly since I've been Bishop of Brooklyn, we have a practical experience, which is like none other, with migrants in our own diocese.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that because, you know, we just, our own migration office here in Brooklyn just celebrated 40 years, and we just recently had a chance to talk about that and about the importance of migration here in the Brooklyn Diocese specifically. How does that sort of help you along in your work on the council?
Well, we have what you might call a laboratory. We have all the experiments you want of, especially the other day when I preached at the 40th anniversary, I said, the Diocese of Brooklyn is like a multiplex theater. We have duplex, triplex, quadruplex. We even have a quintuplex parish where 2, 3, 4, 5 languages are celebrated in the liturgy each Sunday. So it's really unique.
Yeah, that's amazing because and it's something that you don't find everywhere too.
Right.
And it's very sort of specific to Brooklyn that it is such a diverse place, and we keep finding out that more and more and more as we go along here. Well, what have you specifically, if anything, been kind of tasked with on the council, or does it work that way? Are you just kind of an advisor, or how?
Well, at times we'd have to prepare papers. Like just again, a couple of months ago, I did a paper for a meeting in Latin America on the history of the cooperation between the United States and the Bishops' Conference of Latin America. Fortunately, I was not able to present it. I was ill, so somebody else presented the paper, but I did work on it and did the history background. So at times like that, you would ask to be that contributor. Then we would have general meetings where we would go and particular topics would be presented, and we would again respond and give our expertise on it.
What are some of the challenges right now that the council is facing as far as migration goes?
Well, I think refugees right now, as you see, the Middle East is in an upheaval. You've got refugees coming to Europe, different places in the Middle East. It's a major problem for the world, and at the same time, the council tries to give some kind of a direction, a moral direction to the world and to the countries involved about how we have to deal with these problems, and refugees can present a problem to countries when there's an influx. They're not expecting it. How do you support these people who are fleeing persecution or war? So it's a difficult time, and the council tries to work with that.
Sure. All right. Well, Bishop DiMarzio, thanks so much for being here. We really appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
And stay tuned, there's much more Currents coming up. When we return, she's a soul surfer with a miraculous story.
She was the second best young girl surfer in the United States when she got attacked, but now she's reaching the whole world with God's love and God's grace and God's compassion.
Well, finally tonight, Babe Ruth, Michael Jordan, Wayne Gretzky, arguably athletes who were at the top of their game. And one name that you can add to that list, Bethany Hamilton. Yeah, Hamilton was considered one of the best young surfers in the country, but her life took a major detour back in 2003. On an October morning while she was out surfing with a friend, she was lying on her surfboard when a shark bit off her left arm just below the shoulder. But through her strong faith, Hamilton came back from the potentially deadly incident to surf again. And now her inspiring story is the subject of a brand new feature film. It's called Soul Surfer. We caught up with Bethany Hamilton, her family and friends, and some of the stars of Soul Surfer at a red carpet screening of the film in Manhattan earlier this week.
Bethany Hamilton is holding nothing back.
Looks like she has a real future. And with her heart, her will, she'll go far.
Can you believe we get to come out here every day?
Call 911.
Teenage girl from the North Shore. Shark attack.
Traumatic amputation. She's going into hypovolemic shock.
I lost an arm and I gained a deeper passion for God, but I definitely had some rough times where it was frustrating and discouraging.
I can't do this anymore.
But, you know, that's where God comes in. He can pull us through those frustrating and discouraging moments, and, you know, we can push through.
What do we do now?
We'll take it day by day.
She lost 60% of her blood, so it's a miracle that she survived.
When can I surf again?
Soon.
How do you know?
Because you can do all things.
Through him who gives me strength.
Through him who gives me strength.
She was the second best young girl surfer in the United States when she got attacked, but now she's reaching the whole world beyond surfing with God's love and God's grace and God's compassion, and giving people hope that don't have hope and helping people overcome struggles.
There's an 8th grader from North Carolina who lost his arm. He's going to try out for a school soccer team because of me, and he's rooting for me in my next competition.
I don't know why terrible things happen to us sometimes, but I have to believe that something good is going to come out of this.
People are going to come to this movie and walk away and hopefully ask themselves, where are they going to turn in the next trial or tribulation in their life?
I need your help.
It's not going to be easy.
I don't need easy. I just need possible.
God's the only one who can give us the strength to overcome so that we don't sink under the trial, but that we walk on water.
I made a mainstream movie that should appeal to all faiths. It's a great, action, sports, family drama, and the fact that she's a Christian, that is just, it's a wonderful part of the film, and it's what makes it special.
Hollywood looks at it as a niche market. I look at it, most of America as an underserved market in terms of faith-based movies. And there should be more movies like this. This isn't bashing you over the head, saying you better believe in God or you're going to hell. It's a movie about hope and redemption and getting a second chance and believing in that second chance at the same time.
They're real people, and that's what made it so endearing to work with them, is we're telling their story, a real people's story.
And just, seeing that good can come out of bad situations, and especially when you're trusting in God and remembering that He has a future and a plan for you.
When you beat the odds and never say never, you find a champion.
Well, Soul Surfer is in theaters now. And speaking of movies, be sure to tune in to The Net coming up on this Sunday at 8 p.m. As part of the special programming for this Lenten season, you can check out the classic Solomon and Sheba, starring legendary actor Yul Brynner. Yeah, that's coming up this Sunday night at 8 right here on Net. Well, that is all for this edition of Currents. Be sure to visit us online at currentsny.net over the weekend. We are also on Facebook and Twitter. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Matt McClure. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great night and a great weekend.